Okay, we're in the second part of our Advent series. Today we're looking at love and understanding. These two things go together in the sense that as love dissolves and love attracts, and it sometimes requires understanding to know when it's happening, when it's time to let go, and when it's time to affirm something new. I was thinking, you know that Beth and I have adopted, I guess that's the right word, 3 kittens that are about 3/4 grown now. The mother began to show up some time ago, and I was feeding her. She's a feral, absolutely wild, never will be tamed, but she was there this morning, and I do feed her. But I watched these, first in dismay. I saw a mother come out and these 3 little things behind her, and I thought, dang, what do we do now? So I told you that story. I got them all taken care of, and we've pretty much taken the 3 under our wing. I feed them every day and put them in the garage at night and all. But what was interesting to me to watch is how she raised them from the very beginning as they were showing up to us. She had them someplace, we don't know where. She actually had the babies. It was on one of the neighbors' properties someplace, but we never knew where they were. And I think the kittens still go back over there, wherever their home was. But she was very protective, and interesting that when I met Blackie, which is what I named the mother because she's black, she was very small and, had obviously never been a mother. But something in her knew how to take care of these babies that she had. And when you'd see them all come out together, they would all follow her very close, and then they'd go out and, away from her a little bit and play. And she would make these little sounds that they would understand, I guess. And when it was time to go, that is, go back under the fence and go wherever they were, they would all come together and follow her over there. And they were nursing at that time, and so she was doing everything she could to provide for them. And she did a very good job. And we were feeding her, I was feeding her at the time, and she was feeding them. So I began to notice that she was not so open to having them nursing. And she would smack them once in a while just to get them away. And I noticed also they were eating more of the food that I was putting out, so there was a transition going on. But they were all gone one day, and I looked out, and they were on the other side of the street, and she was bringing them back from some expedition they were all on together, all tails straight up and trotting across the street. But they stayed with her and obeyed her commands, whatever those were, just very subtle sounds. But then the time came when she started putting distance between herself and them. And now, if they gather around a food bowl, she'll keep them away, make sure they don't ever get too close. And they act like they would like to befriend their mother, but they are not sure. She's got an attitude. But what it is, it's love in action. And, in the beginning, she's giving them everything she can to support them. And then the time comes when that relationship begins to dissolve. And it begins to take on another look. And from one level, you could say, well, that seems kind of cold and calculated. But when she was beginning to reject them, she was doing it for their highest good, doing it for their own strengthening, their own survival, helping to develop their own survival techniques, which in their case means find the food bowl. It's not like they're in the wild, but if they were in the wild, it would be the same process. She would just probably teach them how to hunt and all. And in one sense, she did teach them how to hunt. She kept them at our place where the food source is. So it's kind of a domesticated, semi-domesticated way of growing up in the wild, I guess. And there's kind of a debate: are feral cats wild or domestic? And that's they're the result of human intervention, I suppose you'd say. But it's an interesting topic. But anyway, that's, to me, a very good illustration of what we mean by love dissolving and love attracting. As the mother began to put distance between herself and them, she was depending on them becoming more mature, able to take care of themselves. And it's a very interesting process. And if you are a mother and a father, you know what that's like. You know what's involved in that. So when we think of love, we tend to think of it as we're throwing our arms around somebody, and we are. Or throwing our arms or throwing our heart into a situation, and we are. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean just one thing. It means there is a dynamic that we have to acknowledge. That there's times when maybe we're clinging to something that we need to let go of, and there's times when we need to draw something or awaken something more in ourselves that is deeper, that we didn't perhaps know was there. And that transition may be difficult to make sometimes, because in one sense, just like leaving this building, there's going to be a sort of a bit of a trauma around that, because this is our home. It's been our home. But it is not, it's not really. It's our earthly home, and the earthly home is a thing that can change. And so there's a time when that needs to dissolve, change needs to occur, and something else takes its place. So that's a transitional thing. And love, we use the term tough love. And that's what that is as well. When we're experiencing tough love, we're basically telling someone that I'm going to wean you. I'm going to throw you out on your own, and you're going to discover something in yourself you didn't know that you had. Maybe I've been giving too much and holding you up to a point where you need to find your own strength. And that's it's part of the process. And sometimes it seems like tough love. Sometimes it seems kind of cold. But it is, that's one thing interesting about the near-death experience is people are nearly always told it's not your time. As beautiful as experiences they're having, they're told it's not their time, and they almost resent having to go back and stuff themselves in this tiny little body that they have. One woman was saying, I was so big, and I had to stuff myself back into this little body. There was a woman from Boulder. She was riding her bicycle, total atheist, had been a scientist for 20 years, riding her bicycle, and came to one of these roundabouts. She was going through it on her bicycle, and another woman that was in an SUV was texting, had her phone up on the steering wheel, ran over, hit her. She flew up on the hood. The woman still didn't see her, even, I guess she was still texting. She falls down under the car, under the SUV, and was dragged 70 feet or so, crushed her spine, broke 70-some bones in her body, and she had a near-death experience. And the result of that experience changed her whole life. She went from being an atheist to being a complete believer in a higher power. She didn't want to necessarily call it God in the normal sense of the word, but she said there's no doubt that our consciousness survives the death of the body. She had a total change. Now, is that love in action? I hope that I'm not that dense, where I have to have my attention gotten in that level. But she said it was the best thing that ever happened to her. Said she would not trade it for anything, and she went through months and months and months of recovery. And you can only imagine. But so love dissolves something in her life. And this is how she sees it. It dissolved her worldview that we are physical beings and that's it. When you're dead, you're dead. She said her body was under the SUV being drugged, and she had a certain level of consciousness. She knew that she was there, and she felt the pain and she felt the terror of it, she said. But there was another part of her, and she said this was the more real part, that was standing about 70 feet away while this was going on, and she was watching it. And she felt totally indifferent about it, just totally at peace about it. And she said, this isn't real. This can't be happening, but it is the most real experience I've ever had. So it's like our worldview needs to be upset sometimes. And in her case, it's a beautiful story. I can't even imagine going through what she went through. But it got her attention, and the person interviewing her asked if she would have come to these realizations on her own if she had not gone through that experience. She said she had several inklings of things that had happened in her life, but nothing so dramatic. And you can imagine, you spend your life believing that you are the product of your brain, that when your body dies, you die. And then suddenly looking at your body being dragged under an SUV, it would kind of be hard to put your old 2 and 2 together, to make your 4. So that changed her whole perception. But that is another example of love in action. Something's being dissolved, but something better is being drawn. That is, an awakening is coming. And, those are two, not real simple illustrations, but we've all had animals. We've seen how all that works. We've seen that process occur. And we know that's love. It's the motherly love. And even when the mother is showing keep your distance kind of an attitude, that's love. Emily Cady talks about that in the book Lessons in Truth. If you're always picking your child up when they fall, you'll never help them. You have to let them fall sometimes and skin their knees and bump their heads and whatever they do. And somebody else was talking about the old hot stove thing. A woman was saying, I told my kids for as long as I can remember not to touch the stove. And one day one of them did, and never had to tell them again. That was all it took, was one little experience. But you don't want to see that. I'm always concerned that our house cat's going to jump up on the stove when it's hot, and how do you tell a house cat or a cat of any kind not to do something? It's pretty hard to get that message across. But it's not because I want to restrict the cat. It's because you want to help the cat. You want to prevent the cat from having a bad day. But anyway, you see what I'm getting at here. There's something's taken away, something's given. And that's the activity of love. And again, we think of love as an emotional thing, and it is. And I don't want to just, throw ideas out there that are like intellectual constructions and we say, okay, we got love figured out now. Because also what people that experience near death say is they were embraced by a love they cannot even express. It is so phenomenal, so beautiful, that there's no words that describe it. So we don't want to leave that side out. We're not just talking about mechanical, things taken away, things brought on. We're talking about an environment of absolute love and beauty. And that's what we live in, and that's what we're looking at today. So again, the Advent wreath, as we're using it here, the evergreen wreath represents God, the eternal, no beginning, no end, which is the circle, and the evergreen. The candle in the middle is the Christ, the soul, the I am, the center of power. It's the I that you are, the I that I am that I am. It's a statement of pure being. It's that which I am. It's that part of the woman that was standing watching her body being dragged under the, and she didn't know quite what to call that. She said, I guess we'll call it the soul. But she said, it's not a soul like I would think of a soul. It was me. It's me. It's not a soul. It's me. And so there's a me in us, an I am, that is the real, and it's the Christ. And the reason I don't care to call it the Christ is because the mind shoots back 2,000 years, and we think of Jesus. But if you like that term, if it feels comfortable to you, if you've got a good understanding of it, and I'm fine with it, I don't have a problem with it, but I understand the dynamics of words that we use and what they conjure up and how they send the mind in all directions. But you can call it the Christ, you call it the soul, you can call it the I am, your center of power, which it really is. And that was what was interesting in the woman's case. She was standing off looking at this, totally empowered. She found her center of power. She is her center of power, the part that was standing off looking. So that's the center part of this. We looked last week at the element of life. God is life. The soul is life. Today we're looking at love. Power is next week. Strength. Intelligence and order will be the final. So the graphic that I shared here last week, I'm going to expand on this just a little bit today. But the section on the left represents God. It's that universal, unformed, universal consciousness. In Him we live and move and have our being. It's that pure light of energy, pure love, pure life. It is the underlying reality. And that individualizes, like a magnifying glass points the rays of the sun to a single point, magnifies or is reduced to the soul level, individualized as each one of us, but we carry the same qualities: life, love, power, and intelligence, image, likeness of God. That in turn expresses out through our consciousness, our field of beliefs, our field of the ideas that we carry, our worldview. And it is that worldview influences how this deeper reality expresses, which is why I left the right side white, because it can express in many kinds of ways. But when we are thinking of the idea of meditation, what we're doing is we are turning our awareness. You'll see the 4 arrows around the inner circle there. Our awareness is focused on the soul. It is focused on the inner presence. We take no thought. You see on the expression side, Jesus said, take no thought. Don't be concerned about what you wear, what you're going to eat, what you put on, whatever. Take your mind off the outer and you turn to the inner. And with practice, you can begin to experience that pure essence of life, light, love, and power. You won't think of it in that way. You'll think of it as an energy that is present. But that's what meditation is. It's not about, altering anything in the outer world. We're drawing upon our spiritual resources. We're getting to know what that is at the deeper level. Prayer is drawing from that inner place and expressing it in our life. So that's we're using our executive faculties of imagination, faith, judgment, will, and elimination. That's the domain of prayer. And we're going to do that here in a minute. But it is, first of all, the experience of this deeper reality, which is the most difficult part for us, is touching that place where we know that I am that I am. But as we do that, as we work toward doing that, then we have an issue in our life, and we begin to direct this awareness to that issue, and if we need to see the activity of love, for example, as we're going to talk about, we would begin to affirm that consciously. We've got a situation in our life that needs to be changed. We'll say, divine love's working through this situation. That's prayer. It's directing to a particular thing. It's using our spiritual faculties, our executive faculties, to direct this universal energy. So it's a graphic, and we don't want to get caught up in the graphics, but it's just a way of helping us understand the difference between meditation is turning within and prayer is giving out from that inner experience. So Jesus probably expressed love in one of the best ways that I can imagine. And I don't imagine most of us think about love when we're reading this verse, but it expresses exactly what we're talking about. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch of mine that bears no fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. So that's the ultimate action of love. It's cutting off that which is not working and making adjustments to that which is working so it'll work better. The idea of the vine is to produce fruit. That's the ultimate good. It's the ultimate expression. So if there's something that's preventing that process from occurring, the Father takes that away. Love dissolves. And to make the expression come out better, it's enhanced through pruning, through adjusting. Prayer means to make an adjustment. And so that's, I think, one of the best statements, but it would not be understood. It's from that perspective generally, because we're thinking of God as the Father, Jesus is, we think of it as the evil being cut off. If you don't profess the Christian message, you'll be cut off, kind of thing. You're a branch that's not producing anything, so you'll be cut off. That's usually how it's interpreted. And if you are a believer, well, you may have a kind of a rough life, so you'll be a better believer. You'll be pruned. You'll be guided into something better. That's generally how it's thought of. But that's love in action. And it's going on in our life right now. It has never ceased going on. What doesn't always go on is our understanding of it, which is why I've linked love with understanding. We want to understand how love is working in our life right now in order to be at peace about it. Because otherwise, love can be like the mother's weaning the baby, and the baby's going, what? What's the problem here? You've always been my friend. Why are you suddenly my enemy? Why are you suddenly taking or withholding something from me that you've always given? And the mother is saying, because there's something better. There's a higher good. There's a greater good for you. There's a greater good for us both. Well, the baby can't always see that, and sometimes we're the baby. Sometimes we can't see why that might be good for us. It may seem absolutely wrong, and it may seem cruel. That's what people say over and over and over again when they get the message, it's not your time yet, you got to go back. Some of them are very angry, and some are very disappointed. Some feel like they did something wrong, that they failed in some way. They're not good enough to go to this beautiful place. But I think what is happening is that voice, whoever is telling them, sometimes it's a relative, sometimes it's a being of light, sometimes it's Jesus, sometimes it's, they can't even identify who tells them. But I think it's their own voice. In this Boulder woman's case, she said a kind of a spirit guide showed up. It was a woman. And she said she felt like she had always known her. And she said, it's not your time, you got to go back. And she felt it was a kind of a betrayal of, well, I thought I was having a good time here, and I thought this was my home because you told me it was my home. And now you're telling me I have to leave my home. And she said that the being told her that you made an agreement to come here, to do something, and you haven't done it yet. And that is a common message. And so what I think happens is that we decided to come here for whatever reason. We still know what that is, but we've forgotten it. We've forgotten it in a way that it's very forefront in our minds. And even when people are told that, they come back and they don't know what that is. It takes them a long time to figure it out. Sometimes they are told. There was another man, I think in Spain, who had a near-death experience. He boarded horses and was on his tractor, and the tractor turned over and crushed him. And he had this incredible near-death experience. But he was told that he would go back and start painting, and he never picked up a paintbrush in his life. And so he started painting. First of all, he said, there's no way I can do it. But while he was recovering in the hospital, they had a room where people were doing art and crafts and stuff. And so he went up and started doing that. And he was led to how to do it. He was guided, and then before long he was showing his paintings in exhibitions, and it was a very interesting story. But his case, he was given the thing to do that he was to do, and his paintings look very abstract, but when a person who has had a near-death experience looks at them, they understand them. It's like he's painting a language most of us don't get or wouldn't get, but he's helping a lot of people through this. So it's a pretty interesting thing. It's a ministry for him. But when we're told it's not our time, you got to go back, it's probably because we know at a deep level what we are here for, why we decided to come here. And so that's love in action. If I let you come and you don't do what you wanted to do, you will remember that and think, gosh, I've got to start over. I've got to go back as a baby again. Who wants to do that? You're this being with all this intelligence, and pretty soon you're squeezed into this little tiny body, and the only thing you can say when you come out is goo goo, gaga, and wet your pants. That can't be too much fun when you've had a better experience. So they're trying to save them going through that and all the teen years and all that, what that involves. But that's how love works. It doesn't always say yes. Sometimes it says no. And sometimes, but it says no for a reason. Because we are to produce more fruit. That is, the line of thinking we're in, it may be sort of there, but it's not quite. So we need something to jar that, to prune it, so that we can open the channel up a little bit more. That's never easy until it's done, until it's over. And then we wonder why we didn't see it. It's like, I didn't want to do that. That's the last thing I wanted to do. But once it happens, because, you know, if you'd sit down with this woman from Boulder and say, how would you like to go through getting run over by an SUV, and it's going to change your life in a really great way? What do you think she'd say? What would you say? I know what I would say. You're going to have to catch me first, and you probably will if that's what's supposed to happen. But that's focusing on love is not always, I guess you'd say it's not always going to be a pleasant thing. We want to think of love as something that's pleasant. The ultimate outcome of whatever happens is good, greater good, and we are afraid to let go. And that's a very normal human reaction. But the problem is we're not human. We're spiritual. We are having a human experience. And we're having normal human reactions. But we are not human beings. We're spiritual beings. And so that's something to think about. Am I stuck in a certain level, a certain worldview of myself, or am I ready to move on into something greater? So we do this through affirmations. Our first one is, I am guided by the understanding that love imparts. This is like a contract. We're saying, I'm going to be understanding of this, how love is working through me. I am guided by the understanding that love imparts. If you want to sign this contract, let's say this together. I am guided by the understanding that love imparts. That's happening now, this very moment. Love is my essence. Love is my being. Say that together. Love is my essence. Love is my being. Now, what we're saying here is, I cannot escape the activity of love. Maybe I can postpone it, but I can't escape it. I don't want to. I want to understand it, which is why love and understanding go together. I want to understand how love is doing its perfect work in me now. Love is the balancing action in all my relationships and all conditions in my life. Let's say that together. Love is the balancing action in all my relationships and all conditions in my life. And again, that's a pretty broad statement, but it is a very freeing statement when we spend time meditating on it. And that's one thing I would recommend. Sit quietly and just say, what is love? How is love working in me now? How is love working through me now? Just ask that question, pose that question, and sit quietly and wait for an answer, wait for some indication that you know the answer to that. All right. Thank you for coming out. Be safe, stay warm, don't get too hot in the afternoon. We're in an interesting time of the year. So thank you for coming out.
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.